down on top of mine and then lifted mine with her and whatnot. We can move these chairs around to the wall too if someone needs to stand for the perfect neck.
Gretchen, can you pull the curtains, please?
Has everybody got a handout now? It kind of summarizes what we're going to talk about. I would like to start, yes, I would like to start. Wait for more people to come in. Are there any volunteer coordinators here? Okay. How about volunteers? Oh, good. Good. Okay. Are there any other classifications? Social? Yes.
I'm a DSS employee.
DSS employee. Okay.
Yeah, DSS employee.
DSS employee. Okay.
DSS employee.
DSS employee. How many DSS employees? AP worker. Okay. Okay. Yes.
DSS transporter.
Transporter. Okay. Good. Good. So
I'm
everybody.
a volunteer and a transporter.
Pardon?
I'm a volunteer and a transporter.
Volunteer and a transporter. And we also have some patrons from Hard Times Cafes here. We've got some from Clare County and from Battle Creek, from Calhoun County.
Raise your
Please
hand.
stand up and just say your name so everyone can hear who you are.
I'm Laurel Thwaites. I'm from Battle Creek, and we attend the Hard Times Cafe in Calhoun County.
My name is Denise Howard, also a Calhoun County Hard Times Cafe patron.
My name is Gilbert Adams. I'm a Hard Times Cafe participant up in Clare County.
And Gil is also an elder of Clare County.
I'm Ernest Douglas. I'm from Clare County also, and also an elder.
And Tina back there with the camera is the administrative coordinator for the Hard Times Cafe in Clare County. She's also a patron. I'd like to start this meeting the same way we start all of our meetings at the Hard Times Cafe, just kind of a habit. And I think that there's a good reason for that. It has to do with appreciation. And when we don't feel appreciated, our energy kind of sags. We like to think that we're internally directed, that everything comes from the inside, and I can just keep going no matter what. People can sling mud at me and it won't bother me and all of that. But appreciation really helps. It really helps to get a sense that someone acknowledges what you're doing and recognizes that it's important and that it has some meaning beyond that. And little things that take away appreciation can kind of, not a real big thing, but they can take away a little bit of our energy too. So I want to make sure that we get some energy here and that everybody really feels appreciated, because from my understanding of the way things work at the Department of Social Services, there's not a lot of opportunity to show appreciation. Everybody's doing things. Whenever I go into Gretchen's office, people are moving around, doing things, answering phones, making copies, talking to people, going in and out of the waiting room. We're so busy doing things that there's not a lot of time just to stop and look at what you've accomplished and what's been appreciated. And too often, it's not very often that a recipient will come back and say, I really appreciate how much you helped me and what you did for me and things like that. Sometimes it happens. But I'd really like to start today by trying to have you get the appreciation that you really deserve. Okay? And that's how we start every Hard Times Cafe. Okay? Is to have everyone get a sense of the appreciation what they deserve. And I'm going to need your help for this. I can't do it by myself. So what I'd like to do is to have you all give each other a rip-roaring standing ovation. Okay? Now I want you to take a minute and think about the work that you do and what you've been working on. And beyond that, think about your potential, what's on the inside. Maybe some places that you haven't looked before, but every single person has a gift and everybody has something that needs appreciation. And appreciation helps things to grow and to flower and so forth. So take a minute and just think about all that you've done and then recognize that there's a whole bunch of other people in this room who've done the same and similar kinds of things. Okay? And then when I count to 3, as soon as I say 3, I want everybody to jump up, okay? It's not just sort of a stand up, okay? I think you're worth more than that, okay? This is a, whoa, stand up and really, really give it to me, okay? So on the count of 3. Now make sure you don't have a cup of coffee right in front of you. The water pitchers are all good. There's plenty in the room. Make sure you got a little elbow room. Okay? The chairs are close together. Okay? Move your chairs back a little bit. And on the count of 3. Is everybody ready? Is there anyone who's not ready? Okay. Careful of the camera over there. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I always like it when someone whistles because I can't whistle very well. So it gives it a little extra spirit. How many of you are coming? If we would have timed it just right, we could have started just as she was walking in the door.
I wish.
Let me get a handout there.
We've got them coming here.
How many of you are coming to this afternoon's presentation? Okay, there's a number of you who aren't. Let me give a this afternoon we're talking about kind of the Hard Times Cafe and how it works, and our patrons probably can present that better than anyone, and they'll be talking this afternoon and sharing what effects the Hard Times Cafe has had on them. So if you want to try to sneak in and you're not registered, we'll try to make room for you. This morning's topic is more kind of the theory of it, you know, which sounds kind of, oh, that's boring, why did I come this afternoon? But what's it made out of? Where did it come from? What's the thinking behind it, okay? And what I'm hoping to share with you is that there's a different kind of thinking in a Hard Times Cafe than there is in our traditional kind of service working. Okay, we're trained to serve people and to act in that way. And Hard Times Cafe is a model for empowerment. And there's lots of definitions for empowerment. I get articles now and then and read them up, and there's people define it in all different ways. I like the dictionary definition. The definition I use is simply to give authority. So someone has authority over our life. And in the Hard Times Cafe, patrons have total authority. Okay? I'm the program facilitator. Gretchen is the program advisor. We have no say whatsoever. We serve at the will of the patrons. At any given night, we could lose our jobs. Okay? It's totally up to them. And all decisions are made by consensus. Okay? Let me just give you a quick overview, and like I said, we'll go into more detail on this afternoon. We opened in November of 1991, shortly after general assistance was cut off. And we provide a meal and just invited people to come for a meal and a good time and to learn some ways that they could improve. We serve the meal. Now our elders serve the meal to the patrons. Okay, there's no one stands in line at the Hard Times Cafe. Okay, everyone is served. Okay, and we try to make the tables nice and make people feel welcome. And the first night we had 6 volunteers lined up at the door so that everyone could feel welcome. Okay, and everyone would get their hand shaken at least 4 to 6 times before they got in the door. Okay, and that first night we served them hors d'oeuvres and we served them coffee and we served them juice. Served them to get a sense that they were welcome, that they're important. Okay, so the focus is on, and I'll go through kind of all the steps and what that means, but the focus is on the dignity, and that's one of the 4, I call them foundations now, of empowerment that we'll be getting into. Okay. The first rule that was set, we only have 3 rules at the Hard Times Cafe. The first rule that was set is all decisions are made on Thursday nights at the meeting. Okay? And so all decisions are made by consensus of the patrons. That means everybody agrees. If one person disagrees, this was a thing that got adjusted later on because we had one person who disagreed with everything. So if one person disagrees, they have to audit for a counter proposal and say, no, I disagree for this reason, and then they try to convince the other one. Okay, and then they have to get someone else to agree with them. Otherwise, it doesn't pass. So if 2 people disagree, it doesn't pass. Okay? So that really forces people to think and to listen and to find kind of the middle ground. I had worked for community mental health for 5 years before we started the Hard Times Cafe, and one thing I noticed is that people who are economically disadvantaged and not in the workforce and the regular routines and things like that don't have much incentive to use their minds for a lot of things, okay? There's no reason to plan ahead, okay? I mean, my life is, I have 3 different jobs that I do, and with the Hard Times Cafe, it's, you know, I got lists and all of this stuff. I got to plan ahead or I could get swamped, okay? But I remember when I was unemployed, I didn't have any reason to plan ahead. I just got up and said, okay, what am I going to do now? And you get to the point where the time frame gets less and less and you get more and more in the moment. There are some advantages to that, but also some disadvantages, okay? And there's no incentive to think and organize your thoughts and stuff like that. So that was built into the Hard Times Cafe right at the beginning, that people have opportunity and an incentive to use their minds and to sharpen them. It's just like a tool. If it sits for a long time, it starts to get rusty and things like that, and it doesn't work. But you use it every day and you keep it sharp, and it works better and better each time. A good tool needs to be used, and our mind is a good tool. We set up some systems in the Hard Times Cafe to help get people moving, to help get them involved. One of them is our community service work system. Okay, so our patrons go out into the community. We've performed just under 40,000 hours of community service work since we opened. We started community service work in February of '92, so in about 2.5 years they've performed just under 40,000 hours of community service work. We work at the animal shelter. Ernie pretty much runs the animal shelter. It's really nice for them because the animal control officers can be out controlling animals, and Ernie's back running the program, and our patrons staff a lot of that. We also have a couple of camps that we help with the maintenance and the kitchen work and things like that, and community action agency where people operate looms and do sewing, and we do work out on the highway. We have a section of highway that we clean up, and where we planted wildflowers and trees, and there's a community beautification program. Everyone who does community service work earns points. We originally called them Hard Times dollars. Now we call them points of improvement. We still call them Hard Times dollars, but there was some confusion when we were writing grants and people thought it was real dollars, but all they are is points. They earn these points depending on the work habits that they show. Because that's another thing, is if you're not into the routine, your habits change. And one of the difficulties is when you've not been working for a long time, is to get back into that. Okay, I had surgery and was off work for about 4 months, and to get back into the routine again took me quite a while. I mean, just after that period of time. So if you've been off work for a long period of time, establishing those habits again takes a while. So if somebody shows up early, they get 50 cents an hour in Hard Times dollars. If they work at a steady pace, they get another 50 cents an hour for the whole day. If their work is well organized and they plan ahead, it's another 50 cents. Okay, if they pay attention to safety, it's another 50 cents. There's 12 criteria that they're rated on. Okay, so they get immediate feedback every day on how they're doing. Okay, and they get challenged to improve that. When we started out, they can earn a possible 6 Hard Times dollars an hour if they meet all the criteria. And I was expecting that they would start out at about 4, and then work on improving it. They started out at 6 right away. And I went to some of the workshop sites and I said, wait a minute, you've got to be real clear in the rating for these systems. You've got to make sure that people are challenged to improve and that they're really doing excellent quality work. And they said they are. And we wound up redefining what quality meant twice. Okay, we said, okay, rate them a little harder, challenge them a little bit more. They did. It went down a little bit and shot right back up again. Over the course of 2.5 years, the average is 5.95 out of 6 in all of those criteria. And that shows in jobs, because when our patrons get jobs, they tend to keep them and they tend to get promoted. We've had a number of people who've gotten Employee of the Month and gotten raises and promotions and recognitions for their jobs and move on and so forth, because when they get into the workforce, they're already into that routine and into that habit. Okay? The patrons also basically are responsible for the administration of the program. We have something like 25 different coordinators. For example, Tina is the administrative coordinator who does just about everything you could imagine. She keeps on wanting a defined job description, but I would need a book about that to list everything if I was real specific on what she does. We have a jobs coordinator who searches jobs in a 5-county area and posts them every We have a worksite coordinator who handles all of the details and the things about setting up work sites and make sure people are signed up for work and get to work and stuff like that. 25 of those, and they work as a team to kind of make administrative decisions and things like that. Same thing, decisions are made by consensus. We also have a group of 9 elders who set the agenda for our meetings, and they listen to the patrons. They aren't leaders. Leaders are servers in the Hard Times Cafe, and that's why the elders serve the meals to the patrons. And their job is to keep in touch with the pulse of the patrons, to listen to people's concerns, and make sure that the highest priorities of the patrons as a whole get into the meeting. And then they also deal with problem solving and get into some long-term planning, and then they supervise the coordinators. Our organizational chart is a circle. Okay, patrons are at the top, and you've got your elders, and you've got your coordinators' teams, and you've got your workers and the assistant coordinators. But everything starts and ends with patrons. Patrons have ultimate authority. They've given the elders some authority to make decisions about if there's a problem situation. The elders will handle that. But it's always subject to the patron review. Yes?
How does someone become an elder? Is it because they've been in for longer?
Our first group of elders were the people who had been with the program the longest. We just went through the attendance list and took the people that ran the longest, and then we started having elections, and they serve a year term, and we have elections every 4 months. And it's a consensus election, so everybody who's nominated gets their list up on the board, and we vote on them all, and whoever has the least amount, we take that name out, and then we start all over and keep voting again. So it's a total consensus, and everyone agrees. Basically, it takes about half a meeting when we have all this election. That's a real quick overview of the Hard Times Cafe. Are there any questions? Yes?
How about funding? How are you funded?
Not well enough. Yeah, that's our struggle. Our budget average is about $22,000 a year, and basically everything goes to the voucher account. I forgot to mention that. Thank you. The patrons can trade their Hard Times dollars for items at our store. Those are donated from the community, things like toothpaste, toilet paper, shampoo, laundry detergent, stuff like that you can't buy with food stamps. Okay. They also earn Hard Times dollars during the meeting for having helpful thoughts. For sharing something helpful in the meeting, you also earn a Hard Times dollar there. So the first meeting, someone can get involved and earn some Hard Times dollars. The voucher system allows patrons to take care of some of their necessities. So they can get things like rent, house payments, taxes, transportation, medical needs, food, auto parts, all kinds of things basically defined as necessities. All these have to be voted on by consensus of the patrons. Okay? And then you get a voucher, and basically we send a check to the business that's giving you the gas. We send a check to the gas station, they take the voucher to the gas station and get the gas. Okay.
What
Question?
about grants?
We're working on them. We've applied for a HUD grant. Mid-Michigan Community Action Agency has come on as a sponsor last spring, and they're helping us with some grants, so we're looking at that.
I was just hoping, because then I had the housing specialist there, I know that,
Oh.
there's a lot of grants out.
Okay, yeah, if you have some specific suggestions, I'd like to talk to you about that. Yes.
Are you saying that you get no grant funding at this point?
We get grants from the Campaign for Human Development, and some area churches have given us some small grants, and we get donations from the community.
Okay, so that's pretty much what funds that $22,000.
Right now, that's where that comes from. Plus, the patrons do fundraisers.
Yeah.
They do car washes, bake sales, flea markets. Our conference brochures that you're getting, those are fundraisers for the program. If anyone didn't get one, there's one each. We're doing 2 conferences in October. And basically, the conference is covering thoroughly what we're going to try to skim over today. Okay, it's going to spend 2 days going into some detail and allowing a lot of time for questions and for people to really understand it, with a lot more input from our patrons who can really hear it from the source in a sense.
What Uber is
Sheboygan. Okay, what I'd like to talk about is really perceptions. I mentioned it real briefly in the beginning, but how we perceive something totally changes how we respond to it. Okay, how you look at something makes all the difference in the world. Okay. look what happens when I let go of this pencil. It drops. Okay? This morning, I let go of this pencil, and it floated up. Now that was in Wyoming, at the other Holiday Inn. And some of you may think, who is this guy? Does he need some testing maybe? Is there something going on? Let's watch his pencil float up. Okay. But what I did is I put it in the sink. I put some water in the sink and let go, and it floated up. Okay. Different situation. Now our way of thinking, we are totally conditioned to water because we live in an air world. Okay. We don't live underwater. Okay. So when I say my pencil floated up, it doesn't compute. People are going to start to say, ooh, you know, wait a minute, where's this guy coming from? Well, it's just underwater for a little while. My hand is underwater. But it floated up. So gravity is something everybody on Earth is familiar with for the most part. Okay? But being disadvantaged isn't something that everyone is familiar with. And there's a lot of different ways it affects us, and everyone has their own individual perception and interpretation of that. So if we're coming from one perspective and dealing with someone else from another perspective, it can be as different as being in air or being underwater. Okay? Looking at things can be as far apart as the pencil dropping, whoops, and bouncing underneath the chair there. I got another pencil.
Over here.
I get it. Oh, thanks. Or floating upward. Okay? And that's the essence of really what I'd like to try to communicate to you, is that there's a different way of looking at things. Okay? And when we can look at things from the perspective of the people that we're working with, the people that we want to see improve, it changes. Okay? I want to just describe to you a little bit about how our brain works, because I think it helps to understand how things work to be able to change them. And there's a brain specialist named Edward de Bono who describes how the brain works in real nice analogies. And one of the analogies is similar to my neighbor's backyard. He had a big sand pit in his backyard. It was kind of ugly. They had taken out a bunch of sand and hauled it away. And he got a bulldozer in and he smoothed it all out and made really nice hills. And my kids love to go there in the winter and slide down, and it's got some nice kind of, humps to it. Just did a real nice job of it. But when it rained, little rivers started flowing down the hill. Okay? And then when it rained again, the water would find those rivers. And then it snowed all winter, and the snow sat on it, and then when the snow melted, the snow found those rivers and just kept on making those little rivers. There must have been about 20 little rivers, and the water would always go in those rivers. And it didn't make new rivers. Sometimes two would combine into one, but each river got deeper and deeper. And that's how our brain works. Our brain is a self-organizing system, which means it organizes itself in response to what it experiences. Okay? So the first experience would go down in this little river. Okay? The next experience we're going to interpret according to the river we're in. Okay? So if I'm a river that says I'm a Democrat, I'm going to interpret someone's suggestion that way. If I'm in another river that says I'm a Republican, I'm going to interpret it differently. And then they don't agree. Okay? Sometimes those overlap, but there are so many situations where we can get into our own little river, and we think that's what's real. In terms of human relationships, there is nothing that we can say for sure is real. Everything is dependent on how we perceive it and how we look at it. And the real key is to be able to switch rivers, to be able to back up and look down another river, and look down another river, and see what fits across the rivers. Okay, I call it scanning. They kind of can scan with their mind and move into that. So it totally changes our perception and the meaning that we assign to things and what happens to it. What we focus on, where we intend. I'd like you to take just a few seconds. It's to be a little uncomfortable potentially, but think about the worst thing you have ever done in your life. Okay? Think about the worst thing you ever did. Just imagine yourself writing that down. The worst thing you've ever done in your life. And now imagine if I collected that and read them, and that was the only thing I knew about you. That was the only thing I knew about you. I knew your name and the worst thing you've done in your life. How would I likely respond to you? Okay? Now erase that. Okay? And imagine the best thing you've ever done in your life. Okay? And imagine writing that down, and I collect it, and I read that. And you see the difference that I would get from this whole group by looking at those two extremes, and those are both true from your own mind, from your own statements. Okay? So we can take a little piece of information, and it's like a funnel. Our mind works like a funnel. Okay? And the bigger our funnel is, the more it's going to drop down the same little hole. So I've got a big funnel here, okay? And I get one little piece of information over here, it drops down that hole. I get another information over here, it drops down that hole. These can be very far apart. Okay? So the trick is to be careful of our categories. Okay? And this culture right now is really into categories because people have learned how to manipulate that. Advertisers have figured that out. Politicians have figured that out. They create categories that will just, there's one big category here called socialized medicine. Okay? And so giving people universal coverage can say is socialized medicine. Doing this can be socialized medicine. Well, this isn't really defined, it's just defined as something negative. And that's actually what political strategists do. If you ever read up on how they plan a campaign, is they try to find these little bases to the funnels, okay, and then they gradually expand the funnels so that everything is connected. And if they can say, oh, that's just that, this is just this, everyone will believe it and dismisses it without really looking at what it is. So what I'm challenging today is to look at what it really is and to clarify it. Okay? And then that turns into a process of empowerment. Because I think that's what gets in the way of empowerment is we set up a category and make some assumptions that that's how people are, that's the way life is and the way the world is. And that leads us to a different kind of thinking when we do that. Okay, I'm going to distinguish between two kinds of thinking. The traditional kind of thinking I'm going to call technological thinking. That's how we're trained to think in school most of the time. How most of our culture thinks technologically. And technologically, we are extremely advanced. We accomplish all kinds of things. It's incredible how much, just in my own lifetime, and I'm only 44, how much we've changed technologically and what we can do. And if you just look at what's going to happen in the next 5 years, it's phenomenal. Technologically, we have gotten down. And there seems to be no bounds. People just assume things are going to be solved technologically. In terms of human relationships, one could make a good argument that we're going in the other direction. Families are breaking down. Crime is going up. Drug abuse is going up, or not getting better. In terms of relationships, it seems like we're getting more and more isolated, more and more caught up in our own selves, and less of a sense of community and a sense of partnership and a sense of sharing. What's happening there? I think human relationships need a different kind of thinking. Okay? Technological thinking deals with objects, and this pencil is an object. Okay? This pencil was in Harrison yesterday, and then I went to Mount Pleasant where I had some clients to see, and then it was in Mount Pleasant. Okay? It was on my briefcase and in my hand and on the desk, and then it came down to Grand Rapids, and then last night it went to Wyoming. It went in the sink this morning. Actually, the other pencil went in the sink, but similar thing. Okay? It's the same pencil. I can throw it up in the air, catch it, drop it. Same pencil. It doesn't change. I can put it here, walk around over here, come back, same pencil. I can give it to Gil. He can give it back. It doesn't change. That's nice, okay? That's easy, okay? You put it there, 10 years from now, it'll still be a pencil. It's consistent, okay? Human relationships are different, okay? It depends on the situation. Depends on your mood. Depends on how you're viewing things at a moment. It's more like a liquid, okay? This water, oh good, there's some in there, now has the shape of a pitcher, okay? And I pour it, and now it has the shape of a glass. Totally different shape, okay? If I spill it on the floor, it has the shape of the carpet. Put it on the table, it has the shape of the table. Okay, drink it, it takes the shape of my stomach. Okay? Now what happens when I mix this with another liquid? Okay? Now this service is not really profound. You may have guessed what was going to happen there, and you're right. Now we have diluted coffee. But I can't get my coffee back. And I can't get my water back. This has changed. This is a different substance than it was before I mixed it. And I'm not going to drink from this now because it's going to taste pretty well. That tasted pretty good. The water tasted pretty good. I mix them together. Two things that taste pretty good, mixed together, don't taste very good. Okay? It changes. That's the stuff of human relationships. When you come in contact with another person and you relate to them technologically, they have a sense of becoming an object. Okay? It doesn't matter what they say. They've got a category, they've got a situation. And we're pushed to do that. We're pushed to define that. Okay? When I worked for the Department of Health, we had a lot of things. We had to put people in lots of categories, and we got to choose a category for everybody to work with. If you're in that category, you're going to cut off your funding. Now that has some value. But on the other side of that, there's a human being there. And if I'm not changed by that person, then I'm not doing my job. Then I'm thinking technologically and missing a good part of what's going on. Okay, so the bottom line is we need to be changed with every contact. And that takes a service mentality and turns it into an empowerment mentality. Service can make us feel real good. Okay? I help these people. Hey, I'm a good guy. Okay? I'm going to give some money to this charity, and I'm going to help these people. And I'm going to go and I'm going to do some volunteer work, and I'm going to help some of these people. And that's important. And there are a lot of people that need help. And that's a very valuable thing to do. But there's another step we can go with that. And that's the step that I'd like to challenge you with today. And that's to empower. Okay? And there's a big difference between empowerment and service. Service is important and good. I'm not saying good and bad. I'm saying good and better. And that's my own value. Okay? This is kind of what we're going to cover the whole day, morning. The conditions for improvement, the process of improvement, the role of helpers, and becoming an effective helper basically are the steps that summarize those 4 principles of empowerment, which I'll get to. But first, I'd like to share with you this little list. So basically, I've broken it down into 2 kinds of perspectives. Everybody see that? Okay? So you've got this handout. Service perspective and an empowerment perspective. Okay? And these are just some different words that, if you substitute one for the other, it takes you into empowerment rather than service. Okay? So asking how rather than why. Okay, in my training as a psychologist, we were really well trained into why. Why is someone doing this? If you figure out why they're doing it, you've got the cause, you correct the cause, you stop the problem. That's a technological kind of approach. When we think in terms of empowerment, we think in terms of how can they improve. It's a very different question. Why are you disadvantaged? Why are you having difficulty? Versus how can you improve? It's a totally different direction. And it's an interesting thing. I found in my own work that why tends not to work very well, even in a clinical situation. I mean, I've had dozens of clients who've come in and have had years of therapy in the past, and I had one just a year ago who came in and told me exactly why her life was messed up. She had had 8 years of therapy, and she told me exactly why her life was messed up because of what happened in her childhood, starting at a very young age and continued on through her adolescence, and wow, she made a good case for it. Her life was still messed up. She had good reason to be messed up. Actually, the whole thing of why, in my mind, kept her messed up. Okay? So we started looking at how can you improve. Now this woman was having a lot of difficulties. She was a professional person, but she hadn't done her laundry in 3 months. She kept on buying new clothes because she couldn't organize herself well enough to do her laundry. Her roommate moved out because she couldn't handle the apartment. This person was having a lot of mental difficulty. I had some question, does she need to go to a hospital? But I always want to test this, how can they improve things? So the first thing we focused on was not what happened when you were 3 years old, but how can we get your laundry done? What gets in the way of getting your laundry done? Okay? It took her about 4 weeks, and she got her laundry done. And then she started recognizing that she couldn't handle things. Because every time she looked at her laundry, she had this sense, I can't handle life. Very intelligent professional person, had a professional position. Okay? Focusing on how rather than why. Really, the treatment lasted about 8 months. She had tremendous difficulty with relationships and things like that. Wound up, called me a while back and had gotten married. And is doing still very well. Has a new job and a new location and is doing very well. The difference between why and how. Research and experience. Technological thinking loves research. The best psychologist you can be is a research psychologist. Okay? It tells people what's true. Okay? I worked with a man once. One of my early jobs was working with mentally retarded people, profoundly severely people, retarded people who had a history of violent behavior. And I worked with a guy once who came from another facility where they just could never get a handle on him. And he was only about this big, but he was just incredibly strong. He climbed up a 2-story brick building with his fingers and toes. Just climbed up, just like a spider. He had that much strength in his hands. And it would take usually 9 people to hold him down when he really got going. Okay? And he came in and was kind of a terror. And looking back through the records, they had done all kinds of things, and it was clear that the psychologist was well-grounded in research because they were trying to reinforce him, and they would give him M&Ms at a certain schedule when he didn't get upset. And then they would adjust the schedule because the research would say to adjust the schedule, and had all this stuff of adjusting the schedule of when he would get his M&Ms, and this would go on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and he wasn't improving. And he came to our facility, and what I did was I hung out with him. I just hung out with him. I just, saw what he did, and kind of walked along with him and dealt with him when he got upset, and just spent some time getting to know him. He was blind. Okay, and he would just fly into these rages, and he beat his head on anything. He just had this continuous sore that he'd had for years, a sore that big, a very deep sore that they couldn't get to heal because every day he would hit it on something. Okay, he just had no tolerance for frustration at all. You know what I found out? Every time he beat his head, he did it on a window or a door. Window was real bad, okay? But he did it on a window or a door, and mostly on doors. So what I did was I opened the door and took him through and let him feel on the other side and closed the door. He never beat his head on the door again. So I took him to every door in the whole facility, opened the door, let him feel on the inside, closed the door. He stopped beating his head. Okay? It came from experience, and research would have never given me that. Okay? So there's a sense of where a person's coming from and what they're doing and patterns that you can recognize. And, this psychologist had worked really hard, and I'm sure he had read 20 articles on how to deal with self-abuse and had tried 20 different things based on the research. But if he hung out with the guy for a couple of days, the answer was clear. Okay? And the guy's head healed after a while. It took a while because there were still, some things going on with him, but it healed. Hadn't healed in many, many years. Okay. Causes and obstacles. We look at obstacles to improvement versus what are the problems. Okay, what gets in the way of you using your natural gifts? What gets in the way of that? Okay, and then we try to address that, or get around it, or work with it in some way. Experts and co-learners. Professionals like to be experts. I know. I started the Hard Times Cafe, and I know all about it. Just ask me, I can tell you anything. Okay, that feels good. I can get a big head and feel like I'm real important. There's a big difference between that and a co-learner. Okay? When you go to talk to an expert, you feel kind of, well, I'm going to look stupid because this person knows everything, and I still get that when I run into a professor at a conference or something who's an expert. You get the sense that you're kind of timid about it. But if you're a co-learner, you're together in it, and you can share, and you can both change. Yes?
Yeah, but what about the person who thinks that who doesn't have the experience to back up being an expert, quote unquote, and still decides that they're an expert? I mean, they know everything.
Well, that's probably a reaction to how they've been treated. So sometimes if someone's been put down a lot in reaction to that, they'll create that. So, but everybody has some area where they're an expert. Everybody has some experience, and the key is to find that. Find out, everybody has a gift. Everyone born has something to give, has something to offer. And as long as you're alive and conscious, you have the capability to improve. And the key is to find that. And then find out what the obstacles are and to work around those obstacles. fixed perspective, going down one river, expanding perspective. We never have a handle on the truth in an empowerment model. There's always something we don't know, which means you get confused. Okay? And as professionals, we don't like to be confused a lot of the time. We like to know what's going on. Okay? We like to be certain. It's uncomfortable to be confused. If you go with an empowerment model, you will be confused. And actually, confusion becomes necessary. Okay? Because if you never become confused, you never really change how you see things. Okay? Einstein once said that coming up with a new theory is not like, gradually you just tear down an old barn and you build a new skyscraper. Okay? What it's like is you're climbing up a mountain and you go up one and then you go down into a valley and you don't see anything. You don't even know where you're going. And you just kind of climb up another one and then you see a larger perspective. And you go down to a valley again and you don't see anything again. Okay? That confusion is necessary because you have to let go of old ways of seeing things to be able to see things in new ways. Needs assessment. We always find out what they need, give it to them, solve the problem. Okay, that's the service perspective. Okay, it's different than a listening survey. Listening for survey means not having any questions ahead of time, but just hanging out with people, finding out where they're at, finding out what their ideas are, what their aspirations are, what their concerns are, where they're hurting, where they're feeling good. Okay, you get a larger, less well-defined picture. Okay, needs assessment, you get some little pieces. Sometimes they're valuable. I'm not saying needs assessment is no good, but I'm saying in an empowerment model, we move beyond that in terms of listening. Knowledge versus understanding. Understanding is based on experience. You've got your feet on the ground and they're standing under you. Knowledge is when we're up in our head. Okay, we can use facts and information and things like that. We need facts and information, but when it turns into understanding, we can move with it and we can be more effective. Client, participant. Okay, if I say you are my client, I'm a little above that. Okay? I'm your client, you're a little above me. I'm dependent on you here. I need you to give me information, to give me help, or even a lawyer has a client. I'm dependent on a lawyer to tell me what to do here. Okay? We don't have that in Hard Times Cafe or in the formal model. We're both participants. Recipient, partner. Subordinate, equal. Focus on deficits, focus on strengths. Kind of the needs assessment thing, not what they need, what can you do. A good example of that is a man who showed up homeless with his 4 children at the Hard Times Cafe, came in from out of state. Someone said, go there. He showed up. I asked him, if I could give you a job and could provide you with all the training that you needed to make sure that you could do the job well at as enough time as you needed to learn it, what job would that be? And he said, oh, computers. I just love computers. And I was into them in the Navy, but it didn't apply to anything, there. I can't get a job because I need to be totally trained. I don't have any money for school or anything. There's no way I can ever do that. He became our computer coordinator. Okay? And then he went back and he finished his high school diploma. He got his high school diploma, and now he's in his second semester of college, starting his third. That's right, he's starting his third next month. And he's got a 4-point average. And he's tutoring other people. Okay. Focus on strengths. I could have said, wow, how did it happen that here you are with your 4 kids and you don't have any money and you're winding up. We could have spent the whole time talking about that. Instead, focus on strengths. Modify behavior, develop natural gifts. You're going to do what I want you to do. You're going to develop your own inner potential. Change the individual, build community. In the empowerment process, we bring people together because that's in our strength. Okay? Conform, adapt. You got to follow the rules if you're going to participate in this agency. You want this kind of service, you got to do it in this way. Hard Times Cafe is a continual process of adaptation. It is not clean, it is not efficient, it is not smooth. Okay? It gets pretty messy sometimes. Okay? We always have to adapt. One person can throw a big monkey wrench in, but by adjusting to that monkey wrench, we have a better program. And we've had to go through hundreds of those kinds of adjustments each time, but each time it makes us stronger. And so it's a confidence in that helps us to continue to grow. Rules and principles. Like I said, we only have 3 rules. All decisions are made on Thursday night. That we will keep the peace, that there will not be no disruptions or things like that. And the third rule is, no, that was the first one. Keep the peace. It's a real simple one. You see how often we depend on rules. But we have a set of 12 principles that the patrons develop early in the program. And whenever there's a conflict, we go to those principles. Honesty, respect, working together, things like that. Things that the patrons said, this is what we believe in, this is what we want our program to be. Okay, so we focus on principles. Applications, go to an agency, you have to fill out lots of applications. Okay, come to Hard Times Cafe, we get some introductions. We meet people, we have contact. Threaten, trust. If you don't take this job, we're going to cut you off. Okay, I think you can really do this. I think you can handle it. It seems kind of scary, but give it a try, and we'll find out what gets in the way of it and try to fix it. Should, can. You should do this. You should get on your feet. You should get moving. You should get a job. You can do it. Look what you've done here, and doing this is just another step further. You can do it. Control from the top, control from the ground. Decisions are made in Lansing, in Washington. There isn't a place bigger than Washington, I'm sure. Someday there will be, where decisions can be made and filtered down to us. But with Hard Times Cafe, it comes from the bottom, in the empowerment process. Then you've got your feet on the ground, and you can move them when they're down there. Okay? But when you've got someone pulling you from all directions at the top, you kind of get up in the air sometimes, and you can't move very much. You get stuck. Rigid changing structure, flexible changing structure. Okay? Turf protection, do what's most helpful. It's real easy when you start looking at keeping your job, that gets scary. Okay? And especially when you have kids, that can get real scary. And your job is defined in your agency, and your agency is supposed to do this, and someone else comes along and say, oh, well, we can do this part probably better than you can. You say, whoa, wait a minute. That's mine. I'm doing that. That's my job. Don't mess with that. Okay? So instead, in an empowerment model, we look at, oh, yes, you can do that more helpful. Well, maybe we can do this. Okay? And if you keep moving with that, I think there's also a sense of security that people could keep their jobs as well. Professional knows best. Participant knows best. Okay? Instead of saying, I have the answers are somewhere in between us, or really more accurately, within you. Because who's going to know better what you need than you yourself? Who knows you better than you? Therapist, mentor, case management, I call it on your case management, self-management. There are no case managers in here. Supervisor, coach. We have no supervisors in this case. We have coaches. We have a coordinator coach who's a volunteer who somebody meet this afternoon, who works with people in much the way a coach does, rather than saying this is the way it is. No input on decisions, consensus decisions, agency-directed, self-directed, incremental development, and design. Each part of the Hard Times Cafe, in a sense, we have to start. Okay, what happens with a lot of agencies, particularly when you get your funding from the legislatures, they set up this system, and then you get a new legislature and an administration, and they set this on top of it. And then you get another one, and they set this on top of it. And then you get another one, and they set this on top of it and take this one away, and it kind of leans this way a little bit. And it's always incrementally changing, okay? It's very rare that they can step back and say, let's look at this whole system. Let's set that aside and look at this whole system and design what fits. It's very hard to do in a service model, okay, because of the structures that are set. And it's always redesigning, backing up, willing to let go of what's there and looking at what fits and what's helpful. Politics, needs and opportunities. So many decisions about how we have to operate are based on politics and what can happen rather than needs. Hierarchy and shared responsibility. Auditors and advisors. Accountability and responsibility. Okay, those are just some, so when you say these words, all I suggest is stick the other word in there and see what happens. Okay, any questions on that? How's everybody doing? Do you need a break? Yes. It's warm in here? It's cold? Okay. Let's take we take about a 5 to 7 minute break. Meet back here at 11 o'clock. That'll be 7 minutes. Okay? I'll be ready to start at 11 o'clock. Okay, see you in 7 minutes. Anybody not ready? I'm ready, you're ready. Here's what we're going to spend the next 40 minutes or so looking at. And like I said, we spend a day and a half on this at our conference, so I'm going to kind of move rather quickly. I got lots of other stories and things that I'm going to go in. There's 4 basic principles that we started with the Hard Times Cafe. And it's basically what we've learned from our experience in working with disadvantaged people. 4 things that we started with. The first, tell you what, I'm just going to save time. And can you all see this okay? I have separate overlays for this and this and this and this. And they're real fancy, but probably if I just leave that up there, we can all see it. It's a small one. Anyone who can't see it? No? Okay, I can slip the other ones up there if you need to. Anyone who get down to the bottom steps. That'll save some time. So there are 4 basic principles, like I said, that we started with. I call them the foundations for empowerment. Okay, they're basically the core of what we're about. And it's a screen for everything we do. Any decision or any action that we take, I run it through that screen. Okay? And if it doesn't meet with those, then we need to step back and look at it again. Okay? The first and the most important is the dignity of the individual. Every person has an essential dignity, and we need to make contact with that dignity right away, as soon as possible. First thing, highest priority. Make contact with that person's dignity and maintain contact with that dignity. And do nothing that undermines that dignity. That is something that we're born with. Everyone is born with an essential dignity, with an essential humanness that needs to be respected and needs to be admired, needs to be nurtured. Okay? And when that dignity becomes fragile or seems like it's missing, we really lose something. And when we lost our dignity, we don't have much left. It doesn't really matter what we do. And you know, a lot of people have told me that when they go on welfare, they lose their dignity. Okay? They get a sense that they're dependent. Okay? That dignity doesn't depend on where you are. It depends on who you are. And that's something you're born with. Can't take that away. Okay? That dignity is realized in contact with other people. It's either enhanced or diminished in how we're relating to other people. Okay? So the focus of that is, in the Hard Times Cafe and an Empowerment Mile, is on that dignity. So that's why the first night we serve, every night, we serve the patrons. We don't want them to stand in line. Okay? We serve them coffee, we serve them dessert. We just, you know, I remember when I lived near Ann Arbor, and the Dalai Lama, who was kind of the equivalent of the Pope, came into Ann Arbor to speak, and people were just, you know, there was just this sense of this dignitary coming. And I remember I saw Jimmy Carter once when he was president, and drove by, and there was this parade of people and all of this important, and there's a sense of dignity and importance about that. Okay, we believe every person has that sense of dignity and importance, and they respond accordingly. Okay, so we really focus on that and keep that right in the forefront, and attempt to do nothing, and if we do something, we back up and look at it right away. That will get in the way of that. The second is focusing on the potential for improvement. That everyone has the capacity to improve. And everyone has an essential potential, an essential gift. And all we need to do is to focus on that gift and help it to grow. It's interesting, in the 50s, there was a real big scare in Seattle. The Russians were just starting to do some nuclear testing. Okay, they were setting off some atom-bombs on their east coast, which was close to our west coast. And some people noticed that there was pitting on their windshields of their car. And then pitting, that there was pits in the windshield. And then more and more people noticed that there were pits in the windshield. And soon thousands of people were finding these pits in their windshield and thinking, oh my God, nuclear fallout from Russia is coming and we're all going to die. And they got the federal government involved, and they sent a team of experts in to study it and look at it and figure out and check the air samples and do all of this stuff. And what they found out was everybody's windshield is pitted on the outside. Doesn't matter if you're in Seattle or if you're in Washington or New York, if you look real close at the windshield, you'll see that it's pitted on the outside. This was in the 50s. Maybe they've improved windshields since then. Okay? But nobody ever looks real close at the windshield. Okay? So no one ever noticed. So all of a sudden you had thousands of people looking really close at the windshield, and they see that it's pitted. Okay? So what we're talking about in empowerment is looking real close at potential. Okay? And focusing on that potential and helping that to grow and finding out what that is and just being absolutely sure that everyone has a gift. Everyone has something to give, no matter what situation they're in. I worked with a woman once who was 19 years old, and one of the parts of the units that I was responsible for was an intensive care unit. She was moderately retarded, and she had an advanced cancer, and they expected her to live maybe a week or two. Okay, so they put her in the facility where I was working so she'd have a place to die. Okay? That woman transformed that whole facility. She wound up living about 5 or 6 months, something like that. And she transformed the whole place. There was an incredible amount of stress. It was a state facility, and there were budget problems, and they kept on making the staff work mandatory overtimes, and we had a lot of single parents on staff who just, kids at home, I can't work, you gotta work, you're gonna lose your job. There was just all kinds of upheaval. And Margaret was just herself. She was just herself. And she would come and sit in my office, and I'd be doing paperwork, and I just, have her sit there so I could talk to her now and then, and she'd look over and take my paperwork and dump it all in the wastebasket and say, this is what's important. Okay, Margaret, you're right. Okay, and she could get people to laugh. And once I had her, let her play with the video camera. She was watching herself on the camera and doing what she did about the Fonz. She was doing her Fonz imitations on the video camera. And this nurse came knocking on my door and was just incredibly distressed, ready to tear someone's throat out. And she glanced at Margaret and saw her doing the Fonz thing and burst out laughing. And then I said, what's the concern? And she couldn't remember right away. Okay, this woman, mentally retarded, about to die, probably did more than a $100,000 a year consultant could have done for that unit just by being herself. Just by her humanity and her heart and her warmth and just being herself, just being who she was. And if she can do that, we all have that same capacity within us. And we all have a gift, a unique gift. And our job is to find out what that potential is. The next one is the power of one more thing about this potential for improvement, because it was such a striking example. We've been building our house for about 7 years, and there's this field across from the house, and I had it cleared off to level it just a little bit so it wasn't quite so many holes and things like that in it. And there was a part where there was just hard pan clay. And weeds and wildflowers and grass grew up all over the place, but this hard pan clay, nothing grew for 2 years. I mean, it would crack in the summer and just, what hard pan clay looked like. Okay? And then one summer, about 2 years ago, these daisies just burst out of this hard pan clay. And the size of the individual daisy was that big, and the clumps were like this, and were this tall. It was just amazing. These Oxalis daisies, I've never seen them so large. They just exploded out of there. There were dozens of clumps around us in the hard pan clay. And whatever it was, however long those seeds were there, but it was years that they laid there, and nothing happened. And then all of a sudden, the conditions were right. The weather was right. The soil had changed enough. Whatever happened, the conditions were right, and they exploded. Okay? And every single person has the potential that those daisies have. There may be those seeds laying there doing nothing, lying dormant. Give it the right conditions, and there you've got it. Okay? The next one is the power of community. Everything important happens in community. There's nothing significant that really happens in isolation. You can say, well, what about an author writes all by himself, or an artist who's off painting by themselves? That work has no meaning until other people read it, or see it, or exchange it. Anything that happens in community. And the worst thing that can happen to us is to be isolated from that community. I want to read a quote from Rembert Weekland. He's from Wisconsin. He's a bishop there. The ultimate injustice is for a person or group to be treated as a non-member of the moral community that is the human race. This is what we describe as marginalization, having no voice and no choice in the social, economic, and political structures of the society. The poverty of individuals, families, and communities is evil. Therefore, not because people's material needs are not being adequately met, but also they are prevented from fully participating in society as active and productive members. Human dignity is not given to one by the community, but is fulfilled and realized in community or in solidarity with others. We do not see how one can live out that personal dignity without access to participation in the life of society in solidarity with others. So when you're outside of the community, and being economically disadvantaged or disadvantaged in other ways tends to isolate us. Okay? It's difficult to go to church. You feel embarrassed when the collection thing comes around. You can't go to the bowling league. There's all kinds of things just with economic disadvantage. But when you belong, you start to feel comfortable and you feel yourself, and you can begin to realize yourself. And then the last is the need for responsibility. That ultimately, we're responsible for ourselves, and we're responsible for the whole group. And that to the extent that we're given that responsibility and have that authority, then we can rise to that occasion and to deal with it. But when we're not responsible, then it doesn't matter what we do. Okay, if Ernie was responsible for how my presentation turned out and it flopped, well, Ernie, you blew it. Okay? Doesn't matter what I do. Okay? I can blame it all on Ernie. Okay? If I'm not responsible, it doesn't matter what I do. But if I'm responsible and other people are depending on me, then it matters a lot what I do. Okay? So responsibility is one of our 4 cornerstones, one of the parts of the foundations for the power of improvement. Any questions on this? Okay. Now the way the rest of this works, and someday I'm going to build a model. I don't know how I'm going to get it in here because it have to be big, but these sets of steps are the supporting members for that foundation. Okay, so if you can imagine those sitting on top of each other, and then a set of steps under each one, and that's how you get there. Okay? So how to get to these foundations of improvement is to build these steps. Okay? And in each situation, the bottom step is the most critical. Okay? So if you take away the bottom step, you got a higher climb to the next one. Okay? Take away a couple of steps, and you got to sort of jump. Okay? Then your chances of falling down increase. Okay? Take away 5 of the steps, and you're sort of grabbing on with your fingernails. Okay? Maybe you can do it. So all you do is give somebody responsibility. Okay, it's up to you whether you make it. We're going to cut off all benefits. It's up to you. We're going to make you responsible for your own life, and don't provide any of this other. You got someone reaching up like this. Okay? But if you build those steps, then they can climb up and keep going, and they're there. It's a whole lot easier. Okay? So that's basically what this means to have that in a step process. The bottom step is the most critical. Okay? So the conditions for improvement. What needs to be there for people to improve? What needs to be there for these flowers to explode and blossom? What has to be in the situation? Okay, they need water, they need nutrients and things like that. What do we need in working with disadvantaged people? The first thing is control. Okay? If you have no choice, it doesn't matter what you do. Okay? Simple as that. I just basically said the same thing in 2 different ways. Okay? If you have control, it's up to you. Okay? Making choices puts our feet on the ground. If you don't have any choices, you also start losing some of your dignity. Okay? What you say or what you think doesn't matter. Do it my way or else. Diminishes you. Okay? Take something away. It also increases our stress levels if we don't have any choices. And when we're under stress, we tend to see less of what's going on. We're more action-oriented. We don't take in information as well. We don't process information as well. Stress diminishes us in all kinds of ways. Okay? And not having the perception of control increases our stress. That's been really well established. Some really neat research they did where they took 2 groups of people and gave them an impossible task. Okay? So this group was doing this task that couldn't be done, and this group was doing this task that couldn't be done. But the first group was given the illusion they had some control. Okay, if you do this, it seems like it matters, but it didn't really. It was just a trick. They didn't have any control. And they measured the stress levels of the both groups. This group had a whole lot less stress, than the group that just simply didn't think they had any control at all. Okay? Having the perception that you have control makes a difference in your stress levels, makes a difference in your confidence levels, makes a difference in how you view things. Okay, acceptance. There's two parts to acceptance, okay? There's acceptance of the reality of the situation. This is just simply what's true and what is. And just accepting that and working with that, as opposed to going off into should. This is the way it should be. Should is another place to go, but if that's where I'm hanging out in this should, I'm not really dealing with this. I can say, yeah, you should get your act together, you should get a job, you should go to school, you should get up in the morning at 8 o'clock, you should get up in the morning at 6 o'clock, you should start doing your exercises, I'll give you 2 hours of yoga, you can do that, do those exercises, you should jog 2 miles, you should start filling out some job applications, all kinds of wonderful things that everyone could do to improve their lives, and all it does is send a message that I don't know you and I don't respect you. When you send that should message, push someone down and push them away. Yes?
Well, see, also the part that some people might be, you talking about that they don't know people. Some people, for instance, I'm disabled. I couldn't do, maybe I could get up and do some of the yoga, but I sure as heck couldn't jog no 2 miles.
And if I say you should do it and you're not physically capable of doing it, that will really diminish you.
And they say, and you have people, now, I was in a program before when I was in this area, I was in a program when they were still doing you have to have job club. It was mandatory for me to have it, but I did it as a volunteer thing. And I had somebody come in and tell me, well, you people should have gotten a job, so now we're going to teach you how to get a job. And they made us feel about like that big. And I can tell you that I am almost certain that at least 75% of those people, if they got jobs, they were minimum pay jobs, or if the other ones didn't get jobs at all. And they were harangued all the time that they tried to get a job. That's not the way to get people to do things.
I think the way is through acceptance.
Mhm.
This is where it is right now, and that's what we're going to deal with. And simply saying that, because should is somewhere else, that's taking us into the past or in the future, we can deal with that in the present. And each person needs to feel accepted. It was a real good point that you made, because if you don't feel accepted, what do? You put up a wall. Okay? And you're going to talk to my wall and not to me, because I'm not going to let you see who I am. Okay? And my wall will let some of what you're saying through, but most of it, if I don't feel you accept me, I don't really want to deal with you.
It'll bounce off my wall.
Yeah, and you bounce off the wall, people get frustrated because they say, well, they're just a wall, I can't get through. Okay? But when you feel accepted and trusted and respected, you can get through and you can have a two-way communication, and you can each be changed and transformed through that. Okay. The next step is support. And support can be very simple and mundane, like transportation, childcare, things like that. How many of you, what would happen if none of you had transportation or childcare this morning or yesterday? How many of you would be here? I'm talking to myself. Okay? Take that away. What have you got? Okay? So it's a real simple level. Okay? There's some basic support that we need. But there's also a sense of emotional support, that you're not alone in it, that you're not doing it all by yourself, that you're not isolated, that you got somebody alongside you, that you got someone with you. And then the next is opportunity. You need an opportunity to realize your potential. You need an opportunity to take little steps. You need an opportunity to test some things out, to try something out, to see what the options are. Okay? You also need an incentive. You need something that's going to, you see some results from it. If you keep on working and keep on trying and keep on going and going and going, and like you said, if the result of all of your work and efforts is a minimum wage job with no benefits, is it worth it? In some sense it may be if you've got some internal kind of motivation, and you've got a sense that because there's a lot of our patrons who've gotten minimum wage jobs with no benefits, and I can't help get angry when I see them working 39 hours a week, because I won't give them the extra hour to give them the benefits. So if they have that internal incentive that they're part of something and they're improving and they're in the, but if that's the end of it, that can be difficult. Okay? There needs to be some incentive for people to improve. Okay? If you took away anyone here who's paid, if you took away your salary, how much would you continue to do? In a sense, that's an incentive as well, and everybody needs that. Okay? Responsibility. I've got some things to add to that, but I'm going to keep moving for time's sake. Justice is at the top of that. Justice can be a tricky one. Justice can be an uncomfortable one. Often we think of justice as getting even. Okay? Justice fits the crime, or punishment fits the crime, and that's justice. Okay? I also think of justice as staying even and starting even. Okay? So, and it's a personal thing. We can kind of rant and rave about what should be in justice terms, but we've already taken the should away. And when you take that should away, justice becomes a personal thing. And we look at what's in our relationship and how does it affect this person that we're dealing with. A couple of real simple examples. People I know who are well-respected, people would say they're good people, they're solid citizens, who employ other people. One person I know have had someone working for him who had 6 children and gave him no benefits. Okay? He said, I can't afford to give him benefits. But every year, this person took a trip to Hawaii, to Barbados. Every winter, they took a trip. For the cost of that trip, they could have given this man with 6 children benefits. Okay? Another person who started a new business and said to the employees, I can't give you benefits now because I'm really trying to build a business and everything goes back into business, but stay with me and you'll see the results of it. And 2 years later, here was a secretary who had stayed with it, and then she quit. And then she told me that she found out he installed a $30,000 bathroom in his house. Okay? So justice gets down on a real personal level there. And we need to think of our own sense of justice, the resources that are given to us and what we do with them, and that's uncomfortable. Okay? Justice will make us uncomfortable because it forces us to look at ourselves. It's real easy for me to say what someone else should do in terms of justice, but we mean this on an individual basis. It has to be fair. And that's a real challenge in the Hard Times Cafe, too, because people will demand special treatment in some situations. And there are some situations where we can make a really good case, yes, this person deserves something special. But if it's not fair to everyone else, if it's not even, then we can't do it. Okay? And then we deal with the reactions to that, too. And sometimes we get very upset about that. Okay, process of improvement. I'm wanting to grab it. I talked about changing perceptions, so I won't go into that a lot, but that's the first step. When we first opened, my intent was to give us a talk on stress and to do a support thing, but in meeting everyone, it was real clear that this is what had to happen. They were angry, they were discouraged, they were frustrated, they had lost their only source of income, and what they needed to do was not look at what they lost, but look at what they could become, to focus on their potential. Okay? People need to participate, to get involved, to have a stake, to have an investment. They need to get moving. Okay? That's how we improve. We don't improve on the sidelines. We don't improve by watching a videotape or watching TV. We improve by putting into action what we might have learned on that videotape or in that TV. Okay? We have to do. We have to get moving and keep moving. Giving and receiving support. And in some ways, giving support is more important than receiving support. In the process of improving, you always find someone or some way that there's support to keep you going and to help you to take care of the things that could become obstacles. But on the other hand, when you give other people that support, you get a sense of what your strengths are. You get a sense that you have something to offer and that it's a shared thing, that you're not isolated, that you're not alone, but that you have something to give. So there's 2 sides to that. When you start improving, you also start sharing that and helping other people. And then it keeps moving and it keeps growing, and you can make some decisions. And then you're in control. You have some input. It's up to you. Okay? You can look at the different options and you can say, I'm going to do it this way. And if you don't make any decisions, you won't improve. Got your hand up? Oh, no. Oh, okay. You can start. Work. When the Pope came to the United States, well, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago now, He said that people need work more than they need income. That work is an essential way that we realize our dignity. It's the most human thing we do, is to work and to produce and to take care of our community, contribute to our community. Okay? So that's why the community service work process and the coordinators' work and the elders' work is central to the Hard Times Cafe. Because when you're working, you feel good. You get a sense of accomplishment. You get a sense that you're doing something. You can look at it and say, yeah, that's done. So we've got 1,500 feet of wildflowers on US 27. And anytime patrons drive by there, they can see those wildflowers standing upright and looking beautiful and say, yeah, we did that. That looks nice. Same thing with the flowers that are planted along the streets and the community areas. They planted something like 65 flowers. How many at the Chamber of Commerce? There were 70, 130 flowers, something like that last week. Every time they drive by that, there's a sense of that accomplishment. And I think that's real valuable. Yes.
You talked about changing the participants' perception. How do you go about changing the employers so that they can accept these people, or just community in general?
Oh, that's a good question, because that's one of our primary goals. Okay, on one of your handouts, it lists the 5 goals of the Hard Times Cafe, and I didn't talk a lot about a lot of stuff that's in the handouts because I need to read it later. But one of the goals is to change the impression of the community, and that's happening slowly. Perceptions in the community tend to change slowly in some situations, but it's really hard for people to drive by those flowers on US 27 and say, welfare people don't want to work. It's real hard for someone to look at 35,000 hours or 40,000 hours of community service work and say to any Hard Times Cafe patron, welfare people don't want to work. Because they want to work, and they're working for a whole lot less. And we have an exchange rate that we have to calculate based on how much money we've got for their vouchers. So if someone wants to get a rent voucher and it's $200 for the rent, they have to earn almost $1,200 Hard Times dollars because of our funding. So they're working for a whole, I mean, it gets close to $1 an hour. Okay? So it's hard. What you do is you make it difficult to hold on to the old perceptions. It's hard to say to someone they don't want to work when they see them working and when they see the results of the work. Okay? And the guy from the dog pound, Gretchen and I were having a lunch meeting, and this guy came up to us at the restaurant and said, I just want to let you know how impressed I am with the patrons who are working at your dog pound. I've had lots of people come from the jail and stuff like that doing community service work, but your people there really do good work. And Ernie, he said, is phenomenal. He just manages it and takes care of it and is real responsible, and I've never had such good workers as from the Hard Times Cafe. He talks to people, that changes perceptions. Yes, and we need to kind of limit questions because we've got about a half hour and I'd like to get through it, but I want to hear what you have to say.
You were talking about how people work hard, how the welfare people, they talk about how welfare people don't work. We have the social contract up in Marquette, and they have all these orientations and stuff, and I do the follow-ups, and I call, and it's amazing. You call and you hear these people, well, I've got a job because of the social contract or because of the most. I've got this because I went to this orientation. And if they're not working taking care of their kids or doing something in the community or in a job, they're volunteering. I mean, we've got a lot of volunteers for our social
So it's
contract.
getting people participating, getting them active
It's
and getting them...
Really, it's impressive. I've been working there for almost 3 years, and I just cannot believe some of this stuff.
Okay, thank you. Succeed. And the definition of success that I like to give is doing what's most important to you. So part of that is defining what's important to you and then moving in that direction. And if you don't have any success, it's hard to keep on trying, to keep on moving. So there needs to be some success built into the process of improvement. And then the next step is share. And that's one of the really nice things about the Hard Times Cafe is a lot of the people who've gotten jobs come back. There's one guy who was unemployed for, I don't know, 7 to 10 years, something like that, and got a job and then started studying for his contractor's license, got his contractor's license, got a better job, and now has gotten jobs for some other patrons, and he keeps on coming back each time. And a lot of the people come back and share their improvements with other people, And as a result of that, we've had people who are improving without us knowing it, just kind of tapping into the energy of the community. About a year ago, there was a woman who sat kind of in the corner and was always really quiet. She never spoke up in the meetings, attended pretty regularly, but just kind of sat through it and was quiet. And then she came up to one of our volunteers and said, I won't be back anymore. This is my last meeting because I got a job. But I want to let you know that I had no confidence before. And I had training to be a physical therapy aide, but I just never believed I could do it. And after coming here, I believed I can do it, and I got a job, and I'm really excited about it. Okay, so by other people sharing that and seeing that, she had the time to do that. Okay? And people need to do that in their own timing, too. That's a sense of the control thing. Okay? It's not like, okay, we're going to make you do this, and it's going to happen. You take this away, and it's real difficult. We've had people who come just for the meal. We try to serve as good a meal as we can, and it's free. And we'll serve it to you, and it's as good as, maybe not some restaurant service, but pretty good service too, okay? So people come for a meal and leave, and that's okay. We've had people who come for a meal for 3 months and leave every time and then hang around for a meeting. One guy started hanging around and eventually became an elder, and then he got a job and moved on, okay? But for months, he just came for a free meal. That's fine, okay? You're in control, you're in choice. Okay, so how do we help with this? What is the role of a helper who wants to get involved in the empowerment process? Can you see this? Am I in the way there? Can everybody see it? You want to do the one up there? Higher? No. Okay. The first thing is to accept. To accept the person as who they are. Okay. Lay off on the shoulds and see their essential humanity. Try to help them to take the walls down. And that whatever you hear, you put in the context of who they can become. Okay? Because you'll run into people who have had some real difficulties in their lives. You run into people who may have sexually abused a child. You run into people who may have been in prison. And you may run into people who've murdered someone who come into the Hard Times Cafe. Okay? You don't take that category and define the person on that. You accept who they are in this moment, okay? And you establish that relationship based on that. Okay, respect. Respect takes acceptance another step higher, okay? That you respect who they are. You respect their essential dignity. And you always focus on that. And even if someone does something that you feel is demeaning or outrageous or whatever, you find a place to respect them, okay? And that really has to happen. If that doesn't happen, if these two don't happen, you've lost it. I had a client once who had sexually molested a 6-year-old girl. He was in jail, and he was court-ordered for treatment, and they brought him over to me to see him. I was supposed to help him somehow. And he walked in the first session, kind of just doing it, and said, I did it because I needed it. So what? Ooh, so what? Oh. Okay, and that was my first reaction. I clenched my fist, like, ooh, okay? And you can imagine how much progress we were making, me as a psychotherapist, okay? And I had to work on this acceptance thing, and it took me about a month of doing my own outside work and getting some help with that, to accept his essential humanity. Not what he did. What he did was terrible, disgusting, but his essential humanity. And when I was able to focus on that without looking at this, okay, but to focus on that and accept him, the obvious thing happened. He shared with me that he himself had been molested over a period of years. Okay, and so he had built his own wall around himself and had no feelings about what he did. But he began to cry. Okay, and I have hope for him because of that. Because if you can feel the effects of your behavior, that really can stop you from doing that again. He's in Jackson Prison, probably will be for a number of years, but I have hope for him. And nothing would have happened without acceptance. Just closes the door right there. Okay? Once you start doing that, you need to listen. To listen in a way that changes you. To listen, I've got a children's book I really love where it talks about little Peter listening from the top of his head to the bottom of your toes. Listen with your toes. Let it affect your feelings. Let it affect who you are. This whole thing about professionals have to be distant to maintain that is both. Okay? You don't have to take it on and carry it with you all the time, but you have to listen and hear it and sense it and feel it and let it move through you. understand. That takes listening and incorporates it into your sense of what that must be like. Understand in terms of not knowing, but understanding in terms of feeling and having a sense of what that experience was like for that person. To share ourselves. Okay, again, the professional distance is, well, I can't tell you anything about myself. But to share our own feelings and concerns and our own, it's not like I have to tell someone my life history, but I'll share something out of my experience if it helps them to see their experience in a different light. And I'll share my reaction to them. And that can be very difficult. Sometimes sharing that reaction means calling somebody on their behavior and saying, this was not appropriate. Okay? When that happens at the Hard Times Cafe, we stop everything and we deal with it. When someone disrupts a meeting because they've gotten angry or out of hand, we stop and we deal with it right there. Okay? As soon as there's a problem, the elders put that right up on the top of the agenda. Got to deal with those things. And share your concerns. We review our principles, we go back with it, and we discuss it and work it out. And try to do it from a positive perspective. How can we take this situation and turn it into an opportunity for all of us to improve? First of all, so that it doesn't happen again, but secondly, so that we all become better because of it. And we have to share our own sense of what that is in order to do that. Join is a family therapy term, and I'm looking for a clearer word. I haven't found it yet because that sums it up so nicely for me. When you join with someone in a treatment session like a family therapist, you see things from their perspective. Quite often I'll get one half of a relationship in for treatment, and then they want to bring their spouse in to work on some joint issues. And so I'll say to my client, I'm going to join with your spouse that first session, and it may sense that I'm taking their side, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Because I need to see their side. I need to sit where they are and see their side and hear their side and feel their side in order for me to understand and be able to work with both of you. Okay, so that's what that joining is to see things as they see to it. It's real close to solidarity because it's pretty easy to link arms at that point and work together. And then the next is to challenge. To keep people moving, to keep it fresh, to always look at what they can become. That you're never quite there. Improving is a process. It's not something you accomplish and say, okay, I'm all done improving, now I can just sort of relax. It's a lifelong process. We're always continually improving. I was in a theater company, an improvisational theater company in my 20s, and the director in a rehearsal once gave me an assignment to go off on my own in front of the group and to do an improvisation on helplessness. He just said, go out there and just be helpless. So I got into being helpless, just kind of wallowing around. Couldn't do anything, fell down on the floor, was sort of rolling around. And then he said to this woman in the company, now go out and respond to what he's doing. And the woman was kind of short and small, but she grew up on a farm and she was strong. And I knew how strong her arms were. And I just had this sense of she's going to save me. She's going to pull me up. You know, and I kind of reached up my arm so she could pull me up, and she sat on it. She sat on it. Okay? And I just collapsed, okay? And then she got up again, and I reached again, and then she leaned on me, okay? And I had no other response to do but to lean back, okay? And then she put all her weight onto me, and I had to lean back. And what the improvisation wound up being was that I was lifting her high up into the air, okay? But what she did was she didn't pull me up, which really would have weakened me, but she helped me find my own strength. And that's what we do when we challenge, is help people to find the strength. And we have that faith that the strength is there. We get to that over there. Okay. Becoming an effective helper. Balance is something we're going to spend a whole day on the September 14th workshop. We've got the orange, I think it's the orange flyer and the stress one. And I think that's absolutely critical. If we're stressed out and out of balance, it's pretty hard to be helpful for someone else. It diminishes in many ways, and I won't go into them because there's too many. But if you really want to learn about balance, that's what that whole day will be spent doing, is to learn. Pardon? Pink. Okay, I'm sorry. Pink. Pink. October 14th, yeah. When you're out of balance, the main thing that happens is you lose your receptivity. I guess if I had to sum it up and try to just pick one thing to say about that, is you don't take in information when you're under stress. You become action-oriented, and the whole physiology of it is geared toward it. And we'll get into that in detail in that workshop. Okay? So if you're not receptive, you're not doing all of this stuff. And you've got to be in balance. You've got to have your feet on the ground. You've got to be receptive to taking information. You need to open. You need to be open to new ways of looking at things, new ways of hearing things, new experiences, to let that come in. If you're fixed or closed, you're not going to be very effective. You need to be flexible. You need to be able to adjust and to change and to fit. And if you've got a rigid structure thing, it's simply not going to work. It's not an empowering process. That flexibility has to be there for it to be empowering. You have to be patient. Things take time. And if we're doing it according to my schedule and it's not happening according to my schedule, we're going to have some problems. Okay, so there's a lot of patience involved in that. Humility. This is a real difficult one because we like to take credit for things. We like to think we're doing pretty good. We like to think that yeah, I've got a handle on this. And I've been pretty lucky in my career because every time I've gotten to that point where I've said, yeah, I've got a handle on this, I screw up really big time. Okay. And I've noticed every time with a client, and I specialize in stress disorders and post-traumatic stress and anxiety and things like that, and so I get a lot of similarities in it, but every time I say to myself, I know what to do here, I blow it. Every time this happens. Okay? Humility is simply reality. Every situation is new and different. You can't anticipate. Okay? And if you're focusing on who I am and how good I am, you're also not listening to what's in front of you. Okay? And if you're focusing on building up this image which doesn't really exist, I mean, it's just not there. After I'm dead, my ego is gone. Okay? Then you're missing what's real and what's in front of you and what's going on. Faith. Okay? The essential faith that everyone has this potential and can improve, and that people will do it. Okay? I've had to learn this from experience because I've had people that have been elected to elders or in coordinators positions, and we think, oh my God, this person just will not handle this. We're in for it. They rise to the occasion. And I've learned to develop that faith out of experience. Okay? Faith in God helps a lot too, okay? Because you need to draw on that, and you need to keep in balance with that. That helps in a lot of ways. But it's an essential faith in the power and the dignity of every person and their potential is really what I'm looking for. And wisdom is the ability to see things as they are. To take away the screens, to take away the things that get in our way, and to simply to see what is. Read some of the stories about Solomon's wisdom, the ability just to see things as they are, and to sort that out. It doesn't mean being an expert or having a ton of knowledge. It just means being present in the situation and seeing what's there. Okay. Any questions? Okay. I put a lot of thought on how to sum this up because I'm just kind of running through this, and I love to tell stories, and there's stories for each one of those steps, so I had to leave them out to illustrate that. And I tried to think of how to wrap it up to give you a sense, because I know that research shows that when you hear a talk, that about an hour later you've lost about half of it, and 2 days later you've lost about 85% of it, and a couple of weeks later you're lucky if you remember 5% of it. Okay, I don't know if those figures are exact, but basically it's hard to keep that. And you all have the handout so you can refer to that and think about it. But I wanted to do something that would help you to get a sense of the feel of the empowerment process and the feel for what we're doing at the Hard Times Cafe. And I know I gave you no warning that this would be in there, but it is part of your handouts. There are a couple of things that I do when I feel like I'm not in touch, or my mind's not working right, or I'm having a hard time focusing or dealing with that. And I always do it when I'm alone. Okay? I don't do this in public very much, but what works for me, and I'd like to share that with you, and I'd like you to join with me in doing that. I'll sing a couple songs. Okay? Sing a song? Yes. And I cannot, my wife is very clear that I am tone deaf. Okay, I don't know tone, so I've been described as singing impaired before. But the term Hard Times Cafe came from this first song, which is called Hard Times by Stephen Foster. And when I learned this song in the early 80s, when during the recession I was laid off from 2 jobs, and one company I worked for went bankrupt and owed me a bunch of money, which I never saw, and lost my house and basically everything I had. And I met some people who taught me this song and just helped to kind of keep that moving for me. And I also sang that song when my daughter died, my firstborn daughter died. And singing that song helps me to get in touch with my feelings and my hurt and a sense of what that's like. And when I feel out of touch with what we're doing, I sing that song and it puts me back in touch with it. Okay, so I guess the best way is I'll just sing it once and you can get a rough idea of the tune, and then we'll sing it together. The second song I learned from the same friends, and it puts a different perspective on things. It's a Shaker hymn, and it's very simple and very light. And the Hard Times Cafe for me is a combination of those 2 songs. That you get in touch with the pain, but then look at what can be simple and light, and try to make that happen. So I'll sing them through, and then these songs for me need to be sung standing up. I sing them when I drive, but I can't quite do it the same. So I'll sing them and let's all stand up and we'll sing it together. I'm going to have to close my eyes to do this because I'm embarrassed to sing it. Gretchen said she'd sing with me. But she didn't say that. Let us pause in life's pleasures and count its many tears, while we all sup sorrow with the poor. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you had lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. Oh, hard times come again no more. And then the second song, the second song lightens it up and puts it into perspective. Tis a gift to be simple, tis a gift to be free, tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when you find yourself in that place just right, you will be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, we'll bow and we'll bend, we will not be ashamed. To turn, it will be our delight, till by turning, we come round right. So how about if we all stand up and sing those 2 songs, and then I'd like you to read one of the closing chapters of the book on the Hard Times Cafe that's being written. And we'll close. Okay. Everybody ready? Now, something you'll learn anyone comes to the stress management stress management conference is grounding, okay? And you need to sing this song with your knees bent. When we tense, we always tense up, okay? We become uptight. We don't become down tight. Okay? We always become uptight. And if you bend your knees, you can't tense up very well. And so put you in touch with your feelings and your body. Okay? Okay, ready? Let us pause in life's pleasures and count its many tears, while we all some sorrow When you find yourself in that place just right, you will be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, we'll bow and we'll bend, we will not be ashamed. To turn, it will be our delight, till by turning, we come round right. Okay, I'd like to close just by reading this chapter. It's from the book that's in process called Lessons from the Hard Times Cafe. Common thread. There is a common thread that weaves through each of the steps of the foundation for empowerment. A single underlying principle supports the dignity of each person, helps us to focus on the potential for improvement, creates the power of community, and provides a catalyst for handling responsibility. This thread knits together the conditions for improvement, the process for improvement, the role of helpers, and the ways to become an effective helper. It is simple, and yet it can be extraordinarily difficult. It is often distant and elusive, even though it is right in front of us and inside us. We know it by letting go of it. We carry it with us by giving it to others. It is the most distorted and sought-after thing on earth. It is free, yet many go to extraordinary expense to achieve it. It is permanent, yet exists moment to moment. We cannot touch it, taste it, smell it, or see it. The only way to have it is to experience it. It's called love. Service that helps to empower others provides us with an opportunity for a different kind of love. It is not a charged, intense, romantic love, nor is it a nurturing, protective, parental love. It is not family love, nor love of country. One could argue that the steps that form the foundation for empowerment will deepen and enhance in any love relationship. Actually, there's no need to argue. A moment's reflection makes it clear that these steps make it easier to love. When we love, we empower. When we empower, we discover a new level of love. The process of empowering opens our hearts to our companions on this life journey. It arouses a quiet, gentle appreciation and respect that deepens our experience of what it means to be human. This is a love that puts our feet on the ground and our heads on our shoulders. Standing with others, we begin to understand. Empowerment engenders a love of belonging. Working with people rather than for them helps us to realize where and how we belong. We let go of fear and mistrust and experience how people fit together. In love, there is no room for manipulation, no need for supervisors, objectives, or accountability. There is a clear and, if absolutely necessary, measurable direction, but love that is measured soon disappears. Love is a forerunner from the beginning. The first couple of months he joined us. He had been out of work for a long time. His wife had been out of work. They were on general assistance. And Gil was at risk for losing his home. He got behind in his payments. And it's kind of a nice story with this because he had the landlord that we wish everyone had. And we have our Hard Times Dollar system, which you'll hear about, our points of improvement, where people can get vouchers to help them make house payments and rents and things like that. So I called his landlord and told her, that Gil was really working hard and was improving, but we didn't have enough money so that he could earn enough Hard Times Dollars to make the payment right away, and could she defer it? And told her a story about what Gil did, because Gil needed some firewood and he didn't have any way to get it. And he got a very large log, and he told me he spent a good part of the day with a handsaw cutting up that log. That's the determination and perseverance that Gil's got. And the landlord called me back and said, well, I'll not only defer his rent for this month, but I'll give him until October till he can get back on his feet. And he can not make payments until then. And then an hour later, she called me back again and she said, can you give me the phone number of some people who have firewood in the area? Because I'd like to send them a couple cords of firewood to show us. So those are the kinds of landlords we want to see all over the place. But it all started from Gil's determination and his work. Gil's special gift is his sensitivity. when we're stuck in the elders meeting, when there's a problem situation, we look to Gil. Okay? He's kind of quiet and soft-spoken, but there's a wisdom there that is really beautiful, and he has a sense of being able to pull what's most important in the situation and hear people's feelings and find a solution that fits that. So, Gil?
Like Bob said, we were in dire straits when we first came to meet. My wife and I were at the ends of our rope. We weren't sure where we were going to go. We thought we were going to lose it all and have to start out all over again someplace else when we had our home half paid for already. And then we got this little flyer in the mail about Hard Times Cafe. And now that I think about it, it was more like a godsend for me and my wife. It brought us a sense of purpose that we hadn't had at that time. We have gained self-esteem, respect for other members of Hard Times. We are not just an individual thing at Hard Times, we are a family. There's no one person that goes without a need that we won't find a way to solve it. We have people burn out or end up in circumstances like us. We'll find a way to help them along, whatever their needs are. Last year we had a family come in. My wife and I met them at the meeting the first night they were there. They had a place to stay, but the man just lost his job, so he wasn't quite qualified for being on any assistance for this family. So we told him to come to our house after the meeting. We have an overabundance of food supplies, so we got him together about 2 weeks worth of food and gave it to him. Never asked for nothing in return. This is what we do every week at Hard Times. A couple of weeks ago we had another member. I had just moved into the area. My wife and I drive her home on occasion, and she said, well, I don't have much dishes. Well, we had extra dishes at our house, so I took a whole box of dishes and cups and stuff out there for her, plastic ones for their children so they didn't have to worry about breakage or anything. We all just stand together as a family. We don't try to outdo one another. We try to enhance each other in every way possible. My wife and I have both gained employment through here. I've gained 2 jobs, and my wife is currently still working at the job that she is in. I had left my one job, and they had enough confidence in me to call me back before I came down here and asked me if I wanted to come back to them, and they gave me a proposition of raising my pay, and I accepted. It's just being a maintenance man at a McDonald's, but it enhances what I know. I'm 2 years or 2 semesters from having a mechanics degree at the Michigan Community College. My knowledge is very helpful in what I do. Everybody else in the group sort of helps us along. 2 people that were very instrumental in keeping me from being downhearted about it was Bob and Lois Lawford. They were very positive people. In the beginning, I was very skeptical about anything working for me in my life. After a lot of hard work and understanding, I knew that this program was going to work for my wife and myself and others. and take gas, and that's why I come to speak to you people, so you can understand how much it means to all of us and how much it means to your counties and our program.
Background, I was more to say hi to him and ask him how it's going, but Ernie has turned into one of our most dependable people. You want something done, you ask Ernie, it's done. Okay, and Ernie was volunteering at the animal shelter, and the guys who ran the animal shelter, the animal control officers, realized they needed to be spending their time out collecting animals and taking care of that and serving the community, and they couldn't do that when they were there answering the phone and supervising other volunteers, so they appointed Ernie to operate. Basically, he manages the animal shelter right now and does an excellent job of it. It's never run smoothly. One of the animal control officers came up to Gretchen and I at the restaurant just a couple of weeks ago and just said he was incredibly impressed with the work that the patrons were doing, first of all, because he's had a lot of volunteers in and out of there, and a lot of people who are assigned, to do community service work, have to do it for jail or for something else. And he said a tremendous difference between the Hard Times Cafe patrons, but he spoke especially of Ernie about his diligence and his perseverance and his ability to stick with stuff and get it done. Ernie was recently elected as an elder, I think he's our newest elder, so I turn it over to you.
Well, the reason why I was so quiet when I first started, I was just out of jail. All my friends had left. And at the end of the shelter, I was doing community work. One of the patrons was working there. He told me about Hard Times Cafe. This is, I don't know, this Thursday night coming. Thursday night coming, two Hard Times meeting, see what you think. So I did. He showed me how to sign up. And he showed me how to register for vouchers and everything. And I was there for, I believe, 3-4 months before I started really getting involved. That's when I signed up to be food co-op assistant coordinator. And I got that position, and I moved on to become, and there's about the same, and I was started 15 months ago, and I haven't missed a Hard Times meeting since I signed up the first day. And this is my first time making this speech. So after I come out here, I signed up to be a part of the new program that we got going up. And I got that part. And anytime that Gretchen or any patrons want me or anything, you can call me. I'll be here to help them out. That's my actuator. And I guess that's about it for now. Maybe next time I'll do a better job and thank you on it. I want to thank you all for showing up. I want to thank you all for, I don't know.
Beautiful thing for me about the Hard Times Cafe patrons is honesty. And when we deal with a concern, it's real honest. And Ernie doesn't try to snow you, he doesn't try to put on a show, he doesn't try to fake anything. He's right there, and you can depend on him as much as you can depend on anything. You know, a lot more you can depend on the weather, that's for sure.
I've been a volunteer forever, it seems. As a teenager, and when I got older, I would volunteer for things that nobody else wanted to do. And in the beginning, it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to do them either, but the job had to be done. And that's what we're doing now at Hard Times, is we're just banding together, and we're having a lot of fun. And what Hard Times means to me is it reminded me of abilities that I always had, but I didn't know it. And because I didn't have to use it, I didn't have to think. I didn't have to do anything to keep the ABC checks coming twice a month. If I wanted to watch television, that's what I did. If I wanted to sleep, that's what I did. And one day my daughter said to me, "Mom, when I grow up, I want to do what you do, nothing." And I said, ouch. But I don't do nothing. Well, what do you do? I go to school. Really? How long have you been in school? 13 years. No, after high school. Yeah, 13 years in college. And then another 2 on top of that. And so I decided that it's time to move on and get out of school and go to work. Except I couldn't go to work because I couldn't afford to. When I went to work, guess what happened? Nothing. Food stamps were gone first. Then, what little money there was, that was gone. And we had the Medicaid, but unless we got sick, we didn't need it. So that didn't do me much good with a Medicaid card in my pocket. So I decided, well, we've got to do something else. So I talked to just a minute, most workers. And I was able to, through a co-op class at KCC, get some reimbursement money, lunch money, gas money and such. And that was a little cash in my pocket, and that was kind of a neat reward for just going and doing what I wanted to do anyway, but couldn't afford to do. From that, it grew into volunteering at the VA Center in Battle Creek, working at the Veterans Administration Medical Center. And people were telling me how dumb you are, that you could be out there, you could be making the big bucks like the other people are, and you could be bringing home paychecks. And so I said, okay, I'll do that, and I signed on. And I was making $5.49 an hour, working 40 hours a week, and I thought, hey, I'm one of the big guys. I can work for a living. And like I said, the food stamps, everything stopped. My whole safety net just ripped down the middle. And I was bringing home $17 a week, or $17 every 2 weeks. After my daycare was paid and my house payment was paid, I had $34 a month for everything else. Personal care, food, if there was any, clothing, there was no clothing money. But then I met, through a food pantry in Battle Creek, Hard Times Cafe. And I thought, well, I am a little tired of having to prove that I'm poor, that I need help. So I'll go, I'm curious, and I'll see what this is all about. And was I impressed? And I'm still impressed. And I think one of the things that I like the best about the cafe is the fact that we open it with prayer. Because in doing so, we invite God into the very center of the meeting and welcome Him as He welcomes us. And it's a way to fellowship with some very dear friends, and we can grow together. One of the things that I've progressed in is self-esteem. There wasn't any, because I had been had these doors shut in my face for so long that I decided, I'm not going to knock on any more doors. If it opens, it opens. If it doesn't open, I just won't go through it. But the confidence has come back. And my kids tell me how proud they are of me. And it makes for a growth experience that we can share. And we can be a team, a small team, but we're growing. And we'll continue to grow. And I just wish everybody could have a Hard Times Cafe experience and just see how good it can be. Thanks.
I started out at Hard Times Cafe after I got a job through the social contract bureau experience that I had. And I'm currently still employed at that job. The reason I started going to Hard Times Cafe is I had 5 children and I'm a single parent. I have no time. I work 40 hours a week. I have no time to spend with my children. Period. That's it. Hard Times Cafe is our family meeting. That's where we do our family business. I have one day a week that I can sit down with all of my children and all of my friends, and I can have a family meeting. And then after we're done with dinner, the kids go away, all the adults talk. I think that's the best part of the whole thing, is the kids go away, the adults stay. And I don't know if any of you have ever been left in a home with any number of children for any length of time. But after a while, you kind of crave adult conversation. And I go to Hard Times Cafe because it means the world to me to be able to sit down and have an intelligent conversation with another intelligent human being and know in my heart that I'm being heard. Not just, yeah, I'm listening to you, I mean heard. It creates an impact on your self-respect, your self-esteem. It builds you up, makes you feel like you can go out and conquer the world. And basically that's what I have done. Judy has seen me at some of my worst days, and she's seen me at a lot of my better days, and Patty also. And I have to say, Hard Times Cafe has definitely improved our lives. And I think if it wasn't for Hard Times Cafe in Bell Creek, I don't know what I'd be doing right now, because at the point when Hard Times Cafe started, my life was falling apart. I was in the middle of a child custody battle with my youngest daughter's father, and I was just not doing real well. And now I have worked through that. I have full custody of my daughter, and
As Bob says, haven't been tapped into. I have worked other positions. I worked as a distribution manager and public relations for a magazine for a while. I